What is up, guys? It is Will Novak, Magnolia LSAT, NOLA LSAT Tutors, the world's most handsome law school admissions consultant, LSAT tutor, and we have a really exciting video for you today. Top 5 topics to avoid with personal statements, and maybe 5 good ideas for topics instead. So, let me ask you guys a question. What do sane people, the sanest people in the world and the craziest people in the world have in common? They both think that they're totally not crazy. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the stuff I'm about to tell you, I tell people don't write about X, Y, and Z, and then they throw it in anyway. And it is based on these assumptions that you guys have about what admissions officers want to hear, and I just want to make this clear. Admissions officers, I don't think you get what admissions officers want to hear. If you are under 25, you have no idea what it is. And if you're over, you still might not know. Some of the people who make these mistakes are over 25. So, all right, we're going to get into this. Top 5 topics to avoid when writing your personal statement. Now, to be clear, one more caveat. Some law schools will tell you to write about this in the instructions. I would still minimize the amount I talk about it. I would talk about it. If they say talk about this, you have to talk about it. But I would make it as little of my personal statement as I could. And we'll get into why all of these topics are bad. All of these topics are bad for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's shit that everyone writes about. These are all some of the most common personal statement topics. And so the problem with things that everyone else does is you're not standing out if you're doing what everyone else does. You had an opportunity to be special. You had an opportunity to be different. You had an opportunity to be unique. And you didn't do that. You blew it. You just wrote about the same thing that everyone else writes about. The other problem is all 5 of these topics tend to be you saying what you think the law school admissions officers want to hear, but not what's actually true, which ends up looking like you're lying. So all of these topics, they tend to come across as very insincere. Okay, all right, we're going to do this. Number 5. The top 5 worst personal statement topics. Number 5, how you overcame a tragedy. This is a story about how you overcame a tragedy. I had a client who contacted me, and they had been diagnosed with some very rough form of cancer as a teenager, and they overcame it. They went through all the treatment, and they're healthy, they're alive, they're doing great. And I said to them, so let me ask you what happened. The doctor came and said you had a 50% chance to live, and you decided to fight. And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, who wouldn't do that? That doesn't actually tell me anything about you. People that don't have cancer also have challenges in life that they get over that are meaningful to them. If you act in a way that everyone else also would act that way, we haven't learned anything about you specifically. So instead of talking about some sort of tragedy, because the idea, right, is to generate sympathy and pity, but it's a missed opportunity. What you really should talk about is an experience where you felt a lot of different emotions. And that's probably not a tragedy. A tragedy is probably it was pretty harsh and then you decided to work through it. So yeah, something where it's kind of a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. That can be a really interesting story. That can be the kind of thing. Yeah, but tragedy, I would generally avoid it. Number 4. Something dramatic that didn't really affect you. So what happens here is people learn that, it can be good to tell stories of things that, totally changed your life. The problem is they don't pick things that changed their life. They pick things that sound like they would change their life. I'm going to give you an example. So, one of my clients wanted to write about being held up at gunpoint. And I was like, well, how was your life different after that? She's like, well, I realized you could be held up at gunpoint. And I'm like, so A, you didn't know that before, which makes you sound kind of a little bit sheltered. you know, that you didn't know crime existed? And B, like, what did you do differently? Like, watch where you walked? Like, did you treat people differently? Did you get different priorities? Did you go through life really that different? Probably not. You're picking it because it's dramatic. I lived in New Orleans for 23 years, and I went through a long period of time where my clients grew up during Hurricane Katrina, and they wanted to write about that. And I was like, okay, what effect did it have on you? Crickets. Why do they want to write about something that they can't even talk about? They want to write about it because they feel like it sounds dramatic. It sounds like something that would have an effect on you. Don't do that. Pick something that actually affected you. And a lot of times, the things that actually affect you don't sound that dramatic. One of the most impactful moments in my life was I was listening to a podcast, and the person on the podcast was like, my opinion is this, and it changed my life instantly. Is that a dramatic story? No. Is it crazy that I was listening to a podcast? No. But like, what I would talk about is how my whole life changed after that, and that's the part. I used to be in a totally different industry that I hated, and one day a person that I barely knew looked at me and was like, you look miserable. And I learned to get out of it. That's also not a very dramatic moment. It's just a person talking to me. But that, like, if it had that effect, that makes it a better topic. All right, number 3. How you want to use the law to save the world. Okay, this is not a good topic. You think it makes you sound like this great person who's going to help people. But the problem is, like, a huge percentage of people write about this and then go work for corporate law. So even if you mean it, you are saying a thing where it's just you are in a world where people say that all the time and don't mean it. The vast majority of law students will never go on to do like meaningful pro bono work. They will not use their law degree to save the world, but many of them think they will. And you end up coming off looking like you don't really know what's going on, or worse, like you're insincere, especially if your resume doesn't reflect a bunch of do-gooder shit. And no, like, doing one, like, volunteer thing for your fraternity for 3 months does not mean you have dedicated your life to saving the world. So don't do this. A better thing to talk about would be if you have an opinion that is really unusual. So here would be the test. So you have an opinion on something, and whenever you say this, when you talk about this opinion, people are like, oh wow, I've never heard that before. That's really interesting. Assuming it's not offensive. Hopefully it's not an offensive opinion. But if like you have like sort of an unusual opinion, that would be really good. Now, again, it has to be an unusual opinion. I told someone about this, and they're like, I want to write about how I am extremely pro-choice. And I'm like, that's not an unusual opinion. Like, the world is full of pro-choice people. That's a very normal opinion to have. So that would not be a good choice. If you were pro-choice because you are very worried about an alien invasion, and you think that being pro-choice is the way to... I mean, actually, that's obviously... The problem with that is it would make you sound crazy, but... So obviously there's that issue there. All right. Second worst personal statement topic. How hard of a worker you are. Okay. This comes from a place, from an idea, and this is extremely common wisdom, that, like, demonstrating how badass you are and how much you can accomplish and how much of a girl boss or a guy boss or a type A or a go-getter or whatever is going to impress admissions officers. Now, there is a kernel of truth in this if you really are unusual. If you think out of everyone else applying to the law program that you're applying to, you literally are a bigger badass than them, then yes, you can focus on this. But if you're not, don't do it. Instead, what you end up looking like is someone who is bragging about things that aren't that impressive, which is a bad look. A much better thing to write about, instead of focusing on how... And by the way, just keep this in mind, like, if you weren't aware of this, the vast majority of people applying to law school are hard workers. That's the most normal quality of a person applying to law school, is that they're willing to work hard. So yeah, that's not the best way to distinguish yourself. A better topic that is sort of in this area is focusing on an unusual decision you made. And again, hearkening a little bit back to bad topic to write about, the first bad topic I gave y'all, it has to be an unusual decision. It has to be a decision that most people wouldn't make in that situation. If it's the same thing anyone else would do, then that's not a good choice. So, for example, if like, I don't know, if your school put you on academic probation, so you decided to start studying, that's not a good topic because I think most people would do it in that situation. They would like try to get their act together. If your school put you on academic probation, so you join the circus for 3 years, that might be a good topic. Okay. Number 1, worst topic to talk about in your personal statement. And this is funny because like some schools again require this, but if they require it, I would keep it for the last paragraph. I just think this is just an atrocious topic to talk about, why you want to go to law school. Okay. So, here's the thing. First off, that is the number 1 thing everyone else is writing about, so you're already not distinguishing yourself. Number 2, you're not talking about anything distinctive. Everyone who's applying to law school has in common that they want to go to law school. So you are literally focusing on something that does not differentiate you. It actually makes you the same as everyone else. Number 3, you are also not focusing on something you are, or something you believe, or something you did. You're focusing on something that hasn't even happened yet. You haven't even gone to law school. So, like, we're talking about a hypothetical. It'd be like, imagine, I don't know, imagine you go on a first date with someone, and you're like, oh, like, what do you do for work? And they start telling you about what kind of job they want to have. Wouldn't you kind of wonder, like, why are you telling me that? Why are you avoiding telling me what you actually do? It's the same kind of thing. Focusing on things that haven't happened yet is not a good look. What should you focus on instead of why you want to go to law school? You should go in the exact opposite direction and focus on what makes you unique from everyone else. Pick something that it's like, yeah, this is going to be the only personal statement about this topic. That would be a sign that it's a good topic. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed, watching it get dark. I don't know. If you want to run personal statement topics by me, you can email me, nolalsat1@gmail.com, or you can send me hate mail, or you can, you do whatever people do. It's not my business. Whatever you want to do.